Hello, my name is Michaela, and today I'm going to be doing a little presentation on some concepts that I've learned so far in Fission 101. So the 5 scientific concepts that I have chosen are the Maillard reaction, caramelization, endothermic reaction, fermentation, and protein denaturation. So first with the Maillard reaction, which is also known as non-enzymatic browning, and essentially, this is a chemical reaction that results in food browning. And so when our food is heated to above 280 degrees, this is when a chemical reaction occurs between the amino acids, or the proteins, and carbohydrates, the sugars, and it causes them to brown. And we can see this in pizza, for example. So basically, we can see it on the crust, the toppings, and the cheese, the proteins and the sugars are being broken down and they're rearranging themselves into ring-like structures which reflect light in a way that gives off this browning color. And in turn, it also creates flavor compounds, and it gives pizza and other foods that go through this reaction their distinct, bold, cooked flavor and an awesome aroma as well. So the next reaction I have is caramelization. And we can see this taking place in cookies. And this is actually the final reaction that takes place when baking cookies. And so this is when sugar molecules are being broken down under high heat. And this takes place inside the cookie at 356 degrees Fahrenheit. And so under this high heat, the sucrose molecules, or the table sugar, is being broken down and is being formed into smaller molecules of glucose and fructose. And also, if you would like less caramelized cookies or less brown cookies, you could even heat your oven to 310 degrees Fahrenheit. Or if you want it even more caramelized, you can continue to crank up the heat, and caramelization will continue at 390 degrees Fahrenheit. But overall, with caramelization, especially in cookies, you're going to get this rich, nutty, sweet, toasted flavor. In turn, is basically like the definition of caramel. So then we have an endothermic reaction, and we can see this when baking a cake. And so in general, an endothermic reaction is when we have to add heat to the mixture to make the reaction take place. And in this reaction, energy is absorbed from the surroundings, and in the example of the cake, the heat energy from the oven is being absorbed. So when baking a cake, obviously it gets placed into the oven at very high temperatures, and since we're adding heat to the batter mixture that we've created, in order for the cake to go from that liquidy from a liquid to a solid and get those ingredients to react, it would have to be an endothermic reaction. Next, we have fermentation. And fermentation is the process that causes microorganisms such as yeast and bacteria to convert carbs such as starch and sugar into alcohol and acids. And fermentation also uses these microorganisms under anaerobic conditions. And these alcohol and acids, they act as natural preservations, which can help limit the shelf life and growth of microbiota in food. And so an example of fermentation can be seen in yogurt, and it is formed when bacteria ferment the milk sugar, known as lactose, into lactic acid. So in the yogurt example, we're taking that carbohydrate, which is sugar, and we're turning it into an acid, and in this case it would be lactic acid. And the lactic acid is what causes the milk as it ferments to thicken, and in turn will make the yogurt taste tart. And lastly, we have protein denaturation. And this is essentially changing the nature of the egg in the example that I have chosen, because we can see this in hard-boiled eggs. And so denaturation is when protein molecules unravel from their naturally coiled state, and the chain of amino acids are changed from their original state. So when boiling an egg, the heat coming up from the stove denatures the protein by disrupting some of its bonds that hold the molecule into its shape. So this is when like the egg whites are going to go from clear to white, And we can see this as the egg is going from raw to soft to the end product, which is our hard-boiled egg.